try this again. Went down a original path. I couldn't get in because of the I don't have a keypad. And I came down this one just a minute ago, but there was people down here and they were seems to be doing some illegal activities, so turned around and minded my business. But they just left. So now I am gonna see what is at the end of this road, end of this walk. There was another one of these, but there was people over there too. So I was just trying to find a good spot. I've never been here before. This neighborhood is next to where I live, but I've never actually just walked around here and checked it out. So just trying to find a good spot. And yeah, look, it is. It's beautiful back here. Definitely one of the big things I love about Florida is its views and scenery and wildlife, nature. So you guys are getting first-hand view of what I'm seeing right now. It's quiet on the lakefront. I love it though. This is called Bear Lake. The lake next to my house is actually called Alligator Lake. So let me set up the camera and get into today's video. Be right back. Welcome back. Hope y'all having a good Sunday. Today is Sunday. By the time you watch this, it will probably be Wednesday. So hopefully the next few days will be good to you. Hopefully you guys had a good Christmas, got to spend time with your family, friends. Even if you spent it alone by yourself, hopefully it was a good time. And got to do a lot of reflecting, shared some laughs, love, all that good stuff. Just out here taking a walk today. Family, the wife's a little bit under the weather, so she's recuperating. The kids are kids. So I just felt like coming out and taking a walk and making a video and just sharing some thoughts. Every now and then I like to come out and just reflect, get to myself. When I used to live in Massachusetts, I used to do that a lot. That's one thing I do miss about living up north is it's more ideal for walking. I mean, they've dedicated places down here in Florida to do so, but up north, especially in like the urban environments, everything is accessible just from walking. Some things might be a little bit further, but for the most part, you can walk everywhere, and that's the thing I used to like to do the most, was just getting out the house and walking and just clearing my mind. Here you kind of gotta jump in a car and then drive to a destination to find a good spot to walk. But that's neither here nor there. So, there are plenty of places to walk. You just got to find them. And, my neighborhood has some good walking paths, but I kind of wanted something different than just a sidewalk and, a typical bike path. I wanted to have a good view and scenery, and, instead of the camera being on me for the most part of this video, is, hopefully just the narration and the good view will be better suiting. But I did want to share about the no's in life, and that sometimes a no isn't a bad thing. No's can be just as beneficial to you than a yes. And sometimes too many yeses, if you just become a yes man, that's not always good either. When you're constantly just, trying to please others, and you kind of put yourself to the side, and it's always a yes, a yes, yes. Sometimes, a no is important, and sometimes the no's that you might have wanted a yes for, that no down the line could have, when you have the revelation of it, you can appreciate it more. So I wanted to share, that no for me recently. This was back in September. I got this letter from the Department of the Air Force. I was trying to get into the military as a reserve. Was really looking for my oldest. She was going through her own things, and I thought, hey, you should look into the military, especially the Air Force, and travel the world, and let them pay for your education. You don't have to do full time. So as I was doing that, I actually stumbled upon that they had brought the qualifying age to 42. So at the time when I was doing my research for her, I was 41, and it was around April or May of this year. So we're about to be, by the time this video drops, we'll be coming into the new year. But yeah, I was like, wow, the cutoff age is 42 now. I hit up a buddy of mine he's in the Air National Guard, and we talked, and he said, yeah, if you're gonna do it now. So I started the process, and at that time I was very overweight for my body type. A lot of that was trucking weight. Some of it mixed with having another kid and just life. Not doing my best to keep up with my health. And that definitely helped kickstart a health journey, because there's weight requirements to get into the military. So fast forward, I did everything. I started talked to a recruiter, did my paperwork, and then I started running. I started running like 3 days a week, just the qualifications for boot camp. So started getting my times better. It was a struggle at first, but I eventually started, seeing transformation within myself and in my body and in my speeds and my times. And I started eating better. So it was a slow process. I finally got to MEPS down in Tampa, spending overnight in the hotel. I was definitely one of the oldest people there. There were a few my age, but the sprinkle of the litter was all 18, 19, 20-year-olds, which is to be expected. And then go to MEPS. I passed everything but my eye, which I knew. I have a disease in my eye called keratoconus. I have had cross-linkage, which was a surgery to try to help stop the progression of the disease. So I already knew going in there was a possibility I would receive a no. So I kind of already had my mindset as a 50-50. If I got in, praise God. If I didn't, praise God. Either way, I was at least going to give it a shot. So everything went through that day besides my eye. They told me they were going to set up an appointment for me to go see a specialist and get his recommendation. So it took about a week after that. So mind you, this was all, by this time it was, like I said, it started around April or May. At this time it was probably like August. Yeah, it was sometime in August. So a few months have went by. I almost didn't have the weight either. My BMI I was like 5% higher than what they wanted for the weight requirement. So I got that down. And in the process of that, I just told God in prayer and in reflection and in my meditations that, like, if I get a no, it's not going to be on my account. Like I could have easily just sat there and been like, I'm overweight. That's my excuse to not get in. Because it was part of me like, do I really want this? Do I really want to do this at this age? Do I want to be away from my family for 3 to 4 months, boot camp and then AIT? Because some of the things that I might have got into, there were 9 weeks, 10 weeks, 12-week programs. So that was all, part of my decision process and things that I was thinking about on a daily. And I continued to push forward. I got the weight down, within, a month of me going to see the specialist. So everything was clear on my end besides the eye. Finally go to the eye. The doctor checks out the eye. He writes a recommendation, that everything was, he could see the keratoconus there, but it seemed stable. And then, 2 weeks go by and, you're just in your own head. You're thinking like, dang, did I get in? Did I not? Blah, blah, blah. And then comes to this email, which I'll put on the screen, but I'm going to read, verbatim. It says, Dear Mr. Roussel Joshua, the Air Force sincerely appreciates your interest and desire to join the world's greatest Air Force. The medical conditions listed below were found to be disqualifying for military service in accordance with DODI 6130.03, Volume 1. Medical Standards for Military Service. Appointment, enlistment, or induction to the Air Force does not have the ability to grant medical waivers beyond the standards listed in this instruction. But after a thorough review, taking into consideration your medical conditions and how it applies to the needs of the Air Force and your own health and safety, it was determined by our medical team that your condition also does not meet waiver criteria for the accession as annotated below. And it has, my disqualifications, the keratoconus, and then unspecified corneal scar and opacity. We understand the impact that this decision has on you, but in accordance with the Secretary of Defense priorities, the national strategy directives, we must ensure a medically fit and agile force to support the Air Force global combat mission, which includes worldwide capabilities. Some conditions that may seem relatively mild and stable in civilian setting have shown to worsen in the military environment, which could lead to adverse consequences for both your own health and to the military mission. Unfortunately, your conditions are such that even with the passage of time, a waiver would not be considered in the future. However, if an error was made regarding your prior diagnosis, then the new clinical notes, not just a memo from a provider about the status of the condition, may be provided to your recruiter, who can submit them to our medical waiver division and re-inquiry into your case about it being possible. We applaud your desire to serve our great nation and invite you to consider serving our military in a civilian capacity. USA Jobs lists many opportunities for employed as a DoD civilian that also support our military, but without medical requirements for active duty or Guard or Reserve military service. Sincerely, Air Force Recruiting Service, Accession Medical Waiver Director. So when I received that, I was telling myself, I'm not going to get disappointed. I'm not going to, sulk, this, and that. When I first received it, I was like, okay. And actually, I called my dad because my dad was Air Force. I was actually born on an Air Force base in California. He did his 4 years. My mother did 12 years, I believe, 12 or 14 years. And my dad had no idea. I'm at the point in life that, until things go through, I try not to share too much. That's blown up in my face time and time again, going, you tell people something that you're doing, and now you got this bug in everybody's ear, and now, they just want to know. Some of it is just them wanting to know the progress of what's going on. Now you have to, go back and tell everybody that you didn't get in, or this thing's not going through. And I'm just at the point in my life now as I get older and I'm starting to try to do things with more wisdom and balance, that I just wasn't telling a whole lot of people, even the ones closest. Really the only ones that knew was my immediate family, my wife, my kids, and my mother-in-law. Other than that, no one really knew. Down the line, I did share a few things to a couple of our other closest friends as time progressed. They started seeing the weight dropping and this, and I kind of just wanted to bring them into what was going on. But yeah, when I received it, I did feel some sort of disappointment. It wasn't like life-shattering because I already knew going in there was a possibility that I was going to get denied because I knew my eye. Same thing, I had my truck at one point, and my eye took me from being a lease purchase driver, and I had to give the truck back. And so I knew there's something with my eye that is a hindrance more than something that's going to propel me into my future. But who knows, that hindrance could have done something. People say what's meant for you is for you. I think there's some truth to that. I do believe everything happens for a reason, and I think you have to have the mindset and the mentality just to know and be realistic with things. If you have some conditions and you're trying to get into the military, you have to have some reserve about it not going the way you might dream of it to be. Or it's anything in life. Any dreams you have, be realistic first. If there's something that's going to hinder you from that certain thing, doesn't mean you don't go forward and try it. I at least gave it a shot. and it helped me. It helped me kickstart my health journey, which, I'll share in another video. But at that moment, I was 240 pounds. I'm down to 215 pounds currently. So, like, that was a blessing in it all. You know what I mean? I feel a lot better. I still have a ways to go. I'm not where I want to be 100%, but, from where I was at that moment when I talked to the recruiter for the first time to where I am now, it's leaps and bounds of who I was. So, that no wasn't a devastating no. It was disappointing in a sense. It was, like, dang, man, I would just really wish I would have known how it would have been to be in the military. And I had two other opportunities before then, one when I was 18, and that was my own fault. I was young and dumb, and I was living a life not anything clear to what I'm living now. And then the other one was 10 years after that. And it just wasn't meant for me to be. And, I'm a person now that, I'm not going to try to kick down a door. I'm going to knock a few times. I'm going to be persistent. But certain doors I just know, weren't meant for me to go through that threshold. And I believe the military is one of them, especially in this moment in time. So that moment, I got the no. But it wasn't a deal-breaking no that, like, my life is ruined now. I still have other goals and aspirations and other things that I wanted to do. So not too much longer. Actually, so that was on, because I have my paperwork here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. But so I got that email September 2nd. I have my job review September 10th. So my job knew I did. At one point, once I knew I was going to MEPS and there was actually maybe a possibility of me getting in, I did let my boss know. He was 100% supportive. So I did appreciate that. I did let him in the loop as time progressed, and I saw that, hey, there may actually be a possibility of me getting into the military. So I wanted to keep him on the same page, that he wasn't blindsided by this. But getting that news and then going in to a meeting with my boss and our operations manager. This was before, and then I'm just trying to remember the time frame. So this was actually September 10th, so this was 8 days later. I get my review, and after a full year, because February 2026 will be actually 2 full years for me working with this company. So my first year was February 2024. I didn't have a full calendar. We go October to October is our fiscal years. So I had a great review for that one. But this was actually a full year, full 12 months. And I was the fourth leader. I was the fourth driver, the best driver, I guess, according to their numbers, how they do the breakdown on my first year. So this second year, going into my second year, I actually became the number one driver. This is not to brag or boast. I'm going to kind of delete some of the names here or cross some of them out, because it's not about making someone look bad or someone. These are just the numbers. This is just what it is. And I told you in one of the other videos, like, I'm coming from the mind frame, like, I have a great work ethic. Like, any job I do, even if I don't like it, I'm at least gonna show my best. And if I don't like it, then I'm gonna find something else. But while I'm there, I'm not gonna slack. I'm not gonna call. And that's never been me. Even in school, like, I never really liked school like that, but I wasn't the type to always be the one skipping and this and that, or, I just went. My friends were there, so it was a place for me to be. So, like, I've always kind of had that mentality. My first earlier jobs, I did quit without having jobs because I was young. I didn't know any better. But as time went, and, the disappointment in my dad every time I would come home, like, oh, I quit that job. And he's like, what, do you have anything lined up? No, I don't. So I had to learn that. I had to learn not to just quit and not have anything as backup, or, have a better plan in place. But that took over time. But the work, showing up to work every day, that's always been me. And I've always give it 100%, especially if it's something that I'm interested in. I'm going to go harder in that. So they do by stops. So I was number one in stops. I did 4,238 stops. Distance, they don't really consider. They calculate it somehow, but it's really stops, gallons, and how fast you get your stops done. That's the main category. So then volume, it shows that I'm in second, but I'll always be, everybody will never beat this other driver, the one that's on top of me, because he has a stop that's our biggest stop, and he does that 4 days a week. So 4 days a week, he could drop close to 2,000 gallons just in one stop. Nobody's ever going to be as close to that. So that's always going to be a given for his route. And that's not to take away from him. But like, I could possibly be in first if I had bigger stops. But, you know, when you have that one stop and you're dumping that many gallons just off of one stop, it's going to be hard to beat. I actually came in second in volume. So like I said, it goes by how many stops, how much volume you do, and then your drops per hour all the way at the far right. I'm at 2.29. So basically I'm doing 2.5 stops per hour, which suburban standard is 2.2. I think it's 2.2 or 2.25, something like that. Or it might be 2.15. I forget. They told me in the meeting, but they said, you know, I'm above and beyond that. And I know I could even beat that. But there's times, you know, like you've seen me, I'm sitting there waiting for the sun to come up. So that's actually working against me, because I'll get like 5 or 6 stops done and then I got to wait an hour. So that's always going to, you know, take away from my stops per hour, because I'm not doing anything productive in that hour. I'm just sitting there. And I have to slow down sometimes because I'm getting paid by the hour. So I'm not trying to get done so fast that I'm actually working against myself when it comes to my hours too. You know, we work 410, so I got to make sure I hit my 40. You know, there's been weeks that I've hit 37 hours because I've just gotten done, and then it was the summertime, and in the summertime, you know, you're not putting as much gas. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But it's funny that 8 days later after I get that no, I get this great review. And it kind of puts things, and then shortly after that, I got to have a sit down with my boss and his boss and talk about the management thing, and, you know, and that's another thing. I'm talking about it, but I'm not going too much into detail because I have to wait till at least till March. And it's one of those things, like, I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but I was just grateful for the conversation because, you know, I've been with a lot of companies, and every time I've got to a company that I've liked, I've told them, hey, I want to move up. I want to get out of this driver's seat. I want to move forward. I want to, you know, I want to challenge myself in other areas than just driving a truck. I know I can drive truck. That's not the issue. But I want to see what else is out there for me. And so, yeah, that's where I'm currently at. I'm waiting for March now, but, you know, this is more to encourage you. Like, you know, sometimes that no, as much as you wanted the yes, that no might have been better for you. And it's okay. You know, move forward. Don't live in that mindset. That's the big thing that, you know, I tell myself, I tell my wife, you know, it's okay to have those moments of, you know, being sad and frustrated and disappointed, and you know, because we're all human and we're gonna go through an array of emotions. But the best thing you can do in that moment is don't live there. You know, take your couple days and guide yourself through it, and then, all right, get back up. You know, life's not over. You know, you can keep moving forward. You know, go back to the drawing board or whatever the case may be, and that's where I'm at. Like, come March, if I don't get the news that I'm hoping that I get, then I told my wife, we'll just figure it out from there. You know, will I be disappointed? Of course. Because at that moment, if it doesn't go in that direction, it's just going to feel like another company's lying to me. And I know I have aspirations one day to work for myself. I just don't know clearly of what that type of, you know, occupation will be or what I'll be doing for myself. But I do believe something great is coming in the horizon. Not just because it's like my family and I have gone through a lot. We've been tested spiritually. I feel like we've been attacked spiritually on many numbers and accounts for trying to do the work of the Lord. And it's just like you see so many people moving ahead, and it seems like they're getting ahead of you. And it's like, you know what, I got to stop looking at those that I feel are getting ahead and just focus on the path that I'm on. It's okay to have that competitiveness at times, and it pushes you and drives you. But if you're constantly just trying to compare yourself to others, and if you don't see too much progress that you feel in your life, and you see other people progressing, that can be more of a hindrance than something that's going to get you to stay motivated and pushed ahead. So I really just wanted to share this video and share my thoughts and my reflections. These are basically my inward thoughts, being spoken outwardly. And I'm grateful, for those that have tuned into the channel, and those that will, later down the line. Maybe you might catch this video a year from now and it's just what you needed to hear at that moment. But if you still have breath in your lungs and you have the ability to go after something, then wherever you're at currently, you might be in that moment of despair and distraught, and you just got to know that just devastated your life, and go through the emotions, but just don't take too long living in that emotion. Don't take a year of just sitting and sulking. Get back up on your feet and brush yourself off, and make sure you have a good support team around you, even if it's just 2 or 3 people. My circle has grown, smaller and smaller, and at one moment I was like, dang, what's going on? And then in other moments, I'm grateful for the small circle that I have, because the people that I have are strong. They have the same mentality of, doing something great with their lives, and, it's motivating to me to see when something, blesses their life and they have a great accomplishment. So, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Again, fly life, man. If you can first love yourself, then you can love yourself first. And if you're able to love yourself, you're going to be able to love others. So I appreciate y'all coming in. I hope you enjoyed the view. I'm sure it's a lot more beautiful than seeing, my face. And until the next video, happy holidays, happy new year, and go after your dreams. Don't take that no as something personal. Take that no and use it as motivation, and be careful of those yeses too. Be careful of just always being a yes into somebody's life, and putting yourself on the back burner for them to progress or for their happiness, but you're in return being miserable. So just figure out how to navigate this next journey in your life, and appreciate the ones that you have in your life, the ones that are truly there for you and that love you, and love them back. Appreciate them back. And until the next video, man, God bless. Talk to y'all later. Peace.